Hi everybody, this is Crystal. So today I'm going to show you how to make this puff stitch hat. It's got big puff stitches because I used some big chunky yarn. So it's my super puff stitch hat because they're so big. But it's real easy and it'd be good for a beginner to do. It could be unisex. You can make it for a man or a woman, an adult man or a woman. What I used was Lion Brand Woolies Thick and Quick. It's a super bulky number 6, so that's what you want to use for this project. And there are 87 yards per skein, and you're going to need a little over about a skein and a half of. So you're going to need 2 skeins, but you won't use all of the second skein. And the color I used is called Coney Island. I just seen that color, and I knew right away I was going to make myself a hat this winter with it. I really liked it. I think it's cool. And you're going to need a size N, which is a 9mm crochet hook. So what you want to do is start out with a slip knot on your hook. And you want to work a chain of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to slip stitch into the first stitch to form a ring. Now we're going to be working puff stitches through the ring. Okay, we're going to put 6 puffs through the center of this ring. So I'm going to start by chaining 1. Now I'm going to work my first puff, and I'll show you how we make the puffs. We're going to yarn over, go through the ring, draw up a loop. We want to do that 3 times. So that was 1, 2, and 3. And you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops on your hook. You want to yarn over and go through all 7. And since this is wool, sometimes you got to jiggle it to get it through. It gets hung up a little bit, but just like that. Pull it a little tight and chain 1 to lock. So that was our first puff, and we need to get 6 puffs through this ring. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to yarn over, go in, drop a loop 3 times. So that's once, twice, 3 times, 7 loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yarn over, go through all 7. Pull a little bit tight and chain 1. So there's 2 puffs, and I just slide them over as I go. Again, yarn over, go in, drop a loop 3 times. That's once, 2, 3, 7 loops, yarn over and go through all 7, pull it, chain 1. There's 3 puffs. Again, 1, 2, 3, 7 loops, yarn over and go through all 7, pull, give a little pull tight and chain 1. So now I got 4. I need to do 2 more. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, go through all 7 loops, chain 1. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1 more. 1, 2, 3. Yarn over, go through all the loops, pull it tight, chain 1. Now what I'm going to do is slip stitch right over here into the top of this first puff stitch. So we'll come over here to it, and if you look, you can see it's just this spot right here on the side of it. That's where I slip stitch into. Just like that. And that'll end round 1, and you'll have 6 puffs. Now you can pull your tail, and that'll tighten up that center circle, and then if it's still too open, you can sew it together the rest at the end. Now we're going to do a round of increases. So we're going to be working in these chain 1 spaces that we just put there in between the puff stitches. So I'm going to slip stitch one time right over here to this first chain 1 space in between these 2 puffs. So I'm just going to jump right into that space and slip stitch just like that. Now I'm going to work 2 puff stitches into this space, but I'm going to start with a chain 1 because it's the beginning of round 2. Now I'm going to work a puff stitch into that space. So there's 1, 2, 3, yarn over, go through all 7 loops, and then chain 1. I'm going to kind of slide it over, and I'm going to put another puff stitch in that same chain space. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, go through all the loops, 7 of them, pull it kind of tight, and chain 1. So I got 2 puff stitches in that first chain space. So now I'm going to look and find my next chain space, which is right here. Put your finger through it, in between my next 2 puffs, and I'm going to put 2 puff stitches into that space. So I'm going to yarn over and go in and do my first puff, chain 1, slide it over and put another puff in that same spot, chain 1. So I got 2 puffs into that next space, and I'm going to continue doing this all the way around, and you can see it's starting to make the hat, the circle wider. So I'll jump over here. You just gotta look for it in between my next 2 puffs, this chain space, and I'm going to work 2 puffs into that space, chain 1, slide it over, put another puff in it, chain 1, just like that. So I'm going to continue working 2 puff stitches in each one of the remaining chain spaces until I get back around to the beginning. And when you get back around, you should have a total of 12 puff stitches when you make it back around to the beginning. Okay, I've made it back around to the beginning, and I have 12 puff stitches, 2 in each of the chain spaces. And I chained 1 after that last puff. Now what I want to do to end around is slip stitch right here into the top of the very first puff. So just kind of right in that spot. And that'll end around 2, and you'll have 12 puffs. Now round 3, we're going to do another row of increases. So what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch again right over here to this first chain space in between these 2 puffs. So just slip stitch, just jump right over there, slip stitch right into it. Now we're going to work 2 puff stitches in this chain space, and since this is the beginning of the round, I'm going to start with the chain 1. Always start the beginning every round with the chain 1. Now I'm going to do my first puff through that chain space, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to put another one in that same chain space again, chain 1. So that was 2 puffs into that first chain space. Now this next chain space right here, I'm just going to put 1 puff into that chain space in between the next 2 puffs. Just 1 puff stitch right through the space. And chain 1. Now the next chain space in between these 2 puffs, I'm going to put 2 puff stitches into this space. So there's 1, go back into the same spot and put 1 more. chain 1. Now the next chain space right here in between these two sets of puff stitches right there, 1 puff stitch. And this is the pattern I'm going to repeat all the way around. Two puff stitches into the next space, and then 1 puff stitch into the next. 2 puff stitches right here into the next space, and then 1 puff stitch into the next. So if you look, where you put 2 puff stitches will always, it's getting 2 puff stitches. And then in between the sets of 2 puff stitches, it's just getting 1. So there's 2 there, and there's only 1 here. And then here's the sets of 2, we put 2 in that one, 1 in the next. Here's the sets, we put 2 in that one, 1 in the next. Here's the sets of 2, so we'll put 2 in this one, and then 1 in the next. This will be the sets of 2 right here, and we'll put 2 in that one, and then 1 in the next. And we're gonna repeat that all the way around. And when you get back around to the beginning, you should have 18 puff stitches this time around. Okay, I'm coming to the end of round 3, and I have my 18 puff stitches, and I just did the chain 1 after my last one. So again, I'm going to end with the slip stitch right here into the kind of the side or the top of this first puff, just right about here. Don't have to be exact, just kind of like right in here, just like that. And now in round 3. Now we're going to do one more round of increases. So we're going to slip stitch over to our first chain space again, and then this will be starting round 4. We're going to chain 1. Now what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting 2 puff stitches in this row of 2 puff stitches. So 2 puff stitches in the first chain space, like that, and then 1 puff stitch in each of these next 2 chain spaces. So 1 here and 1 here. So I'm just going to go on over and go into the first one and put 1, chain 1, jump over to the next one and put 1, chain 1, and then the next space is going to get 2 puff stitches right here, because you can see there's 2 here, so we're going to put 2 in this one. And that's the repeat for this round. Chain 1. And then 1 puff stitch in each of the next 2 spaces. So we're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 puff stitch, 1 puff stitch, 2. 1 puff stitch, 1 puff stitch, 2. You can see we're still keeping where there were 2 puff stitches, we're keeping them lined up. So 1 puff stitch, 1 puff stitch, 2. All the way around. And when you get back around at the end of round 4, you should have a total of 24 puff stitches. Okay, I've made it back around the end of round 4, and I have 24 puffs. So what I'm going to do now is end by slip stitching into the side of this first puff. Now that's it. That's all increasing that we're going to do. So now from now on, it's just going to be 1 puff stitch in every single chain space. So we're going to slip stitch over to our first chain space. This is how we're going to start every round. And chain 1. So we're starting on round 5 now. And we're just going to do 1 puff stitch into the first chain space. I love wool yarn, but it just gets caught. It gets tangled up and caught up on your hook. But it's still my favorite. And then I'm going to jump to the next puff, or the next chain space, put 1 puff, chain 1. one puff into the next chain space. So since we're not increasing anymore, you'll start to notice the hat. Every round the hat will start to form what looks like a hat. It'll start to go it down and form the hat. It'll take a few rows to make it to where you can start seeing it to do that, but now it's just rows of one puff stitch in every single chain space all the way around. Okay, you want to repeat this one puff stitch in every chain space for 7 rounds. So 7 rounds of one puff stitch in every chain space. Okay, once you get your 7 rounds of one puff stitch in every chain space, you should have a total from the beginning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 rounds. And now we're going to make the 12th round a round of single crochet. So 11 rounds is when you want to stop, and then we'll work on our 12th round. We'll trim it in single crochet. Then my slip stitch. I'm not going to slip stitch again over to this chain space. What I'm going to do is chain 1, and I'm going to go back into that same space and single crochet. Just one time. And now I'm going to jump over to the chain space and single crochet. And then I'm going to single crochet into the top of the next puff stitch. So kind of like right here. Go right into that space and single crochet, and then I'm going to single crochet in the chain space of the next spot, and then in the top of the next puff. So if you pull it apart you can see it. Single crochet, and then in the chain space, so right through the space, in the top of the next puff right here. And I'm just going to continue this all the way around just to clean up this last edge through the chain space, then the top of the next puff. So I'm going to continue this until I get back to the beginning. Okay, once you make it all the way around, back to the beginning, go ahead and go in that last puff stitch there. Now I'm going to slip stitch into the top of my first single crochet. Not my chain one, but my first single crochet, like that. And then I'm going to clip my yarn, tie off, hide that tail, and that is it. It's finished. There's my puff stitch hat. I really like it. I'll be wearing this winter. This will be my hat. So it was pretty easy. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook. You can post all your crochet items on there. I'd really like to see them. You can check me on Instagram too. I'll put links to all that stuff below in the description box. And until next time, have a good day.